Glad to have you join us here on Bring It Home, where we're going to take concepts of Homeland Security and national security and bring them home to you. And today we're going to be talking about a very interesting subject. We're going to ask the question, what the heck is Homeland Security? I mean, we use this term all the time. What does it actually mean? A lot of people will take this definition and begin at the time of the American Revolution or before and say we've had a National Guard, we secured ourselves from attacks by Indians or Native Americans, or they'll look at the concept of securing the coast and say, well, that was Homeland Security. But I really trace the origin of what we use the term for today, Homeland Security, back really to the attack on the Murrah office building in 1995, Timothy McVeigh's attack. Because before that, we didn't actually use the term, even though some of the concepts may have been present. It was after that attack that we impaneled a defense panel, actually put together in '96, issued its report in 1997, the National Defense Panel, and it used a term for the first time. The term it used for the first time was Homeland Security, or Homeland Defense. What it suggested in this report, Transforming Defense, National Security in the 21st Century, was that we needed to think about defense of the homeland, that terrorists were going to attack us here eventually, and we needed to be thinking about a defense of the homeland was the term that it used. But the reason was interesting, not just to protect Americans, but because we wanted to make sure that military resources weren't concentrated in the United States when you actually needed them overseas. So they, for the first time, advanced this concept of Homeland Security or Homeland Defense. There were a number of other reports that came out in the next several years. One was the Bremer Commission. The Gilmore Commission issued several reports, the first of them in 1999, and then Senators Hart and Rudman put together a report called the Hart-Rudman Commission. They issued 4 reports. All of these over the next several years, a couple of them actually continued after 9/11, all of them had a similar concern. And that concern was that the issues of terrorism were going to come home to the United States. We were going to see it here. But they had a point of disagreement. And the point of disagreement was, what should we do about it? Should we worry about attacks on the U.S., which were going to be low probability, but the consequences would be very high? For example, a biological attack or an attack with a nuclear weapon. Low probability that would happen, the consequences would be enormous. Or should our attention be focused on those things which are very high probability but relatively low consequence? High probability that someone, for example, will try to bring explosives into the U.S. to attack an airport. High probability that someone will take a gun to an airport and shoot up people in line. High probability that eventually we'll see some kind of sniper who, for political or religious reasons, or even because he's deranged, will attack people or crowds. High probability somebody might attack a train. High probability because every one of those things I just mentioned has already happened in the United States. The consequences were tragic for the families of the individuals involved, but they didn't impact national security or the power of the nation as a whole. So where should our attention be placed? Well, some people thought this question was answered on 9/11, but the truth is it continues with us today. We did, however, as a result of 9/11, even though we didn't sort out where we want to put our people and our priority and our money, we did come to a conclusion that we needed to be serious about terrorism. In fact, we came to that conclusion so rapidly, and some would say overreacted with that conclusion, that we began to define Homeland Security entirely in terms of terrorism. In fact, this is the way the National Security Strategy of 2002 defined it: a concerted national effort to prevent terrorist attacks, reduce America's vulnerability to terrorism, and minimize the damage that occurs from terrorist attacks. Now, a number of people argued at the time and over the next 2 or 3 years that we were overreacting. And in fact, we ought to put more attention on natural disasters. But by and large, that fell on deaf ears because there was such concern about real attacks. I mean, we might have Americans die as a result of continued attacks with planes or with other explosives. So as a result, it came somewhat as a surprise when Hurricane Katrina roared ashore, and we found that we were unprepared as a nation to rapidly respond to a major natural disaster. Of course, there was a great response, or some would say over-response, in that case as well. And as a result, we've adjusted the practical definition, and certainly we've adjusted the resources that are used, and now we focus on evacuating cities in the face of big storms and responding to natural disasters, just as we focus on the issues of terrorism. However, interestingly, the Homeland Security Strategy in 2007, 2 years after Katrina, did not change the formal definition. It remained focused on terrorist attacks and reducing vulnerability to terrorist attacks. Now, I spoke with several of the authors, and they said the reason they did that was because they didn't want to lose the focus on terrorism, and they thought it would be somehow compromised if they did talk about natural disasters. I understand their concern, but my personal take is that probably we need a more practical definition of Homeland Security, and this is what I teach my students, that Homeland Security is measures taken to protect American citizens and domestic institutions and to support the American way of life against either domestic attack or catastrophic natural events. What this means is that almost everything in the academic arena, almost every discipline has something to devote, something to contribute to the field of study of Homeland Security. To make our lives better and safer and more secure, not just from deranged external attackers or from radicals within the United States, but also from earthquakes and tornadoes and so forth. Everything from architecture to agriculture has something to contribute. Now, I must tell you the truth, I would actually suggest a different definition, and I'm hoping that in the future years we'll adopt a different definition. I'd like to see us talk not about Homeland Security because, frankly, the term Homeland puts some people off. There are those who say this is a European term and that many Americans came here to flee oppression in the homeland. I'd like to see us talk about civil security because I really think that gets across the idea of protecting civil society and civil liberties as well as public safety and national security. So I'd urge you the next time you think about Homeland Security, think about its definition, how far we've come, what it is that we want to achieve. And I hope these concepts, this idea of Homeland Security, not just as a term of national security, not just against attackers, but as a way to secure our civil rights and our civil liberties, those things that are dear to us as Americans. I hope these concepts have come through to you from this little presentation, and we've been able to bring those concepts home to you because that's our task here on Bring It Home, to take issues of Homeland Security and national security and help bring them home to you. Stay with us for more and learn more by going to our website, homelandsecurity.tamu.edu. That's homelandsecurity.tamu.edu. Thanks for being with us.